Buenos días a todos. My name is Kaliris, she, her, ella. You'll hear a little bit more from me later, but we have gathered here today to talk about artificial intelligence and to really frame the work in terms of how we can resist the use of artificial intelligence in our schools. We want to create this space, of course, together as a collective to support each other because we understand the harms that AI can have, particularly in education. And I will share that as somebody that's in higher education and supports medical students, we're also in a position to, again, protect patients, protect our students, and protect our work. So we want to create a norm and an understanding that this is not the space where we're going to negotiate whether AI is good or bad. Well, we know it's bad. But we really want to center people's best interest, of course, and protect our children, right? Because we know that our children, our planet, us as human beings, our brains, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, are at stake in this moment. So we just want to ground ourselves these next 2 hours in creating a space where we can really think about how do we best protect our communities from the harms of AI while still engaging in very much human-centered schools where the people are the ones at the center of our practices. So the way we've set this up is we have 2 panels. The first panel, each panel is going to have 4 speakers. The first panel is going to focus a lot on the student, parent, teacher experience. And the second panel, we're going to look at the big picture. And so I'll introduce our guests a little bit later. But before we start with those panels, I want to introduce Senator Kristen Gonzalez, who's going to open us up this morning. I love a little mic. I think I'm going to put this and this down, though. Hi, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone doing? I am so excited to see a room packed over this issue specifically because as a senator, but as a chair of the Internet and Technology Committee, I can tell you every single day I talk to people about AI and I say this is an issue we have to care about. And more it seems like people are tuning in. So seeing you all spend your Saturday morning, seeing some familiar faces, seeing some new faces gives me a whole lot of hope that we can make a lot of change through Albany, through legislation, and really through organizing with all of you. So I wanted to start with a thank you for showing up. I want to start with a big thank you and round of applause to our organizers. They are incredible, and it is not easy to put together these events. I also heard we have 150 people online, so hello to our virtual neighbors. But I know I have 10 minutes. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the work we've been doing in Albany, what I mean when I say AI regulation, but I'm happy to take a couple of questions. And then I know you have an incredible slate of panels today, so really definitely want to hear what everyone has to say there. So very briefly, I represent a 3-borough district in Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan. And I, before taking office, was a tech worker. I worked in product management. I worked in our big data systems. And it's funny because as a product manager, they talked a lot about human-centered design. And it always extended to what our customers or our, in this case for me, it was our colleagues who are our users, what our end user experience was. But it didn't really extend to what work environments we had, how we were building our products. And when it comes to the introduction of generative AI and new types of artificial intelligence, because we know we've been using AI for decades, that's when a lot of questions have come up around what it means to have a human-centered workplace and also a human-centered school, right? Because these big tech companies are looking for every opportunity to take their large language models, especially, and embed them in every sector, in every classroom. And while there is a lot of good potential for what that could mean, and it really could be a tool for good, for the most part, those companies are more interested in maximizing their profit than providing the best experience for your students, for teachers, for all of us. And what I found as a regulator is a couple of things. One, I found that these tools are imperfect. And when we talk about large language models, I think these companies benefit from the lack of a common knowledge about what we're really talking about. We're talking about big models that are trained in a whole bunch of data that were built for no specific purpose. And right now, other than convincing us that they're a lot of times our companions or our friends, right? The second thing I found is that as we've tried to regulate this newer, especially newer technologies, big tech has gotten more and more aggressive in pushing back on regulation. So in the first 2 years of chairing the committee, I passed a couple of important bills. One, I passed a bill to protect our democracy when it comes to deepfakes in elections. I passed another bill called the Loading Act, which was the first bill on government use of artificial intelligence, because if we're going to start regulating the private sector, we want to hold our government to the same standard. But a lot of the good stuff got kicked out by the governor. And the version that was passed, though, and what we were able to fight for in partnership with the Public Employees Federation, with the AFL-CIO, was the first in the nation labor protections for government workers, or any workers from automation. And I'm really proud of that because it really sets a standard for making sure that when we have union workers, AI and automation doesn't get in the way of collective bargaining agreements we've all worked so hard and fought so hard for. And with this first bill, you know, we were really excited. It had also some protections on employment decision-making when it comes to automated systems. But this year, we took all the things that fell out and we reintroduced that through in both chambers, and we added an additional protections for our teachers. So we worked with NICET and AFT, and the labor protections we had won last year, we expanded to all of you. Right now, that bill is awaiting signature on the governor's desk. And while it should be common sense that if we can protect our government workers, right, we should be able to protect our other public sector workers, like our teachers, there is a whole lot of worry on the other side with big tech that if we start centering labor and unions and workers and the voices of all of you in these conversations, that it chips away at the power that they've built, lobbying states, lobbying the federal government. I'm sure you've heard a lot about AI moratoriums so that we can't even enforce our own legislation. And that will build, I'm sure we'll get into it today, but we'll build a society that's more on our terms, that's centered on us and not them. So with that, you know, we have some good bills coming up next year too. We're going to keep fighting for that signature. We have a bill on data centers, 2 bills on data centers, because through all of this, it's not just about us. It's about making sure we're not having our other resources exploited, like our energy infrastructure and our water, right? And we have some other really good bills on chatbots and companion models, because I think we're seeing more and more that these, when left completely unchecked, there's an incredible amount of risk and mental health related issues. So we have bills not only to regulate them broadly based on California's ballot initiative, but also bills to make sure that we are banning the use of AI as they present themselves as licensed professionals, like therapists, et cetera, and others. So I'll stop there. Happy to take a couple of questions, but thank you so much. Thank you. Oh my God, right here. I think we have one right here in the front. You want me to?
Yeah. My name's Leonie. I run an organization called Parent Coalition for Student Privacy. And I thought your bills, but I may be mixed up because I've read like 20 different bills in the last couple of weeks around AI. But I thought the bill that's sitting on the governor's desk also requires transparency around which AI tools are being used in government agencies, including schools, because DOE won't tell us. And number 2 would require privacy impact assessments. Is that right?
That's 100% right. And you've made my week that you know what's in the bill. So thank you. And let me tell you, those were, when I said good parts that were kicked out, that was part of what was kicked out. It was impact assessments and audits and transparency and clear privacy guardrails. So that's really like, it should have been common sense last year. It obviously, from the Senate and Assembly perspective, we passed it again, we want it. But it really is a matter of if the governor has the will to.
And what can parents and teachers do to try to lobby the governor to sign the bill, because she has to do it before January 1st, right?
That's right. If she doesn't sign it, then it's vetoed and we have to start all over again next year. So what you all can do and what I really need your help with is actually 2 things. One, reach out to the governor's office. You can send an email, you can call. We are going to share our bill numbers with the organizers so we can get that circulated so you know, but it's called the Loading Act. And I'm Senator Gonzalez, so I'm the sponsor. And the second thing is also talk to your local representatives, because as much as I cover 3 boroughs, I'm sure we have folks who are not in my district in the House. So talk to your assembly members and your senators so that they know that this is a priority and they start bringing it up with the executive as well. Thank you for these questions, though. And honestly, it is so nice to hear people who know what's in the bill. So thank you. Do we have, I think I probably have time for one more with being respectful. Oh, we got one up here. One more. Okay, one more. Thank you. Thanks.
Very briefly, on the on that approach of contacting the local officials, which of the local officials are with you on this issue? Because my assembly have a seat, he may be, he may not be, Representative Meeks, and others. I want to know, like, where do we stand on that? And what are the arguments from the other side of the spectrum on this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the question was basically, who in terms of your local representatives are with us on this issue, who's not? And then the other question was, what are some of the arguments against these bills and the regulation? So both really good questions. To the first one, these bills were passed with bipartisan support. They had a ton of co-sponsors, and a lot of your, if not most of your representatives have voted in favor. But just because we've done the work of getting that support and getting them through the legislature, it doesn't mean that we're at the finish line yet, right? Because we need as many people as possible reminding the governor, hey, I voted for this bill, we passed it, and I care if you sign it. So it's kind of asking them a little bit more. It's like, you've already supported us and we've done a lot of good work. Please, keep on putting the pressure. To the second question, what some of the arguments are against bills regulating the public sector use of AI, certainly also private sector use. I didn't mention another bill. It was called the New York AI Act, which is a consumer protection bill, which regulates, again, broadly private sector use of artificial intelligence in decision-making about all of our lives in multiple sectors. But anyway, with all those bills, I think the argument is always that it's funny because government and private sector mirror each other in this way. It's that somehow it is too hard to do this. Like, it is too hard to have people in our government agencies having impact assessments and audits when these technologies are in use. We were told it was too hard to have an inventory of when and how and why these tools are being used. And, as government, we need to build trust with our our communities. So we should definitely if we're going to roll out the tools, we have to make the time and we have to make the funding to do those things, right? To make sure privacy is protected, et cetera. But in the private sector, I find that even more appalling because I've heard a lot of companies or firms say, we love the technology, but it's going to cost us too much money to hire someone to do an audit of if the tool is working the way it's intended. And when they're making, most of them, billions a year, that is especially ludicrous. But for the smaller companies or small businesses, it's anytime you're going to use this only, again, in a high-risk scenario, which is like you're using it to make a decision about someone's life. If you're going to use it in that way, then you have the responsibility to have the infrastructure to steward those tools responsibly. So that's kind of the biggest. It's always like a money, we can't do it. But anyway, I want to be respectful of time. I want to say thank you so much. Reach out to us if anything. And I hope you guys have a great day. I give this to you.
Thank you, Senator Gonzalez. I also really quickly want to acknowledge Superintendent Dr. Alan Chang to come really quickly and address the crowd, maybe say a couple words or from there if you want to. Alan has always been really helpful. I was like, we need a school. Can I use one of yours to do this? And he was really generous in providing the space for us. I also want to fully disclose that he's a superintendent for one of my kids' schools. So I, have a little preference here.
Wonderful. I was just going to speak from the back of the room, but I know that there are folks that are online. And good morning to you all. This particular place, Syeda School, is near and dear to my heart. This is where I was a principal for 9 years. And this is the place where I ran my advisory group and really got to be able to see them do tremendous, amazing things. And to really kind of ground all of this back in this that city school represents much of what our public schools are capable of doing, which is reclaim a level of agency about what they believe schools are meant to do, and really rebuilding a lot of those human connections that oftentimes can be lost in this very big system. So my role is as a high school superintendent. I support all of our consortium schools, schools that are part of the Internationals Network that are serving newcomer immigrants, as well as schools that are part of New York City Outward Bound. The one thing that I'll add about our work around artificial intelligence is that we've been spending much of the year really doing student focus groups. We go into schools, we create sessions, and we ask them for their current experiences, both their worries as well as their aspirations. Worries about how it is being used, how it is things are happening to them, and what their hopes and dreams are for this, how they want to be able to see their teachers utilizing AI or not, and ways in which we can continue to create school environments that celebrate the human connected nature, celebrate creativity, the generation of new ideas, and the collaboration that so many of us want to see and do well. And the lessons that we've learned from some of the challenges and harms that have come from the uses of social media. And so we do think that there's a tremendous opportunity, and much of what I'm doing is really just listening to our students, talking to them, putting them in the driver's seat, and giving them a chance to be able to reclaim some of that agency. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking of students, we do have a student that's going to open us up. Syeda. Yay! Also, shout out to her teacher, Aizeki Rodriguez, longtime MORE member.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Syeda, and I'm here from Motion Picture Tech. I'm here to talk about AI and how it's affecting people's, especially kids' life and kids like my age. I'm I'm a ninth grader. I just started high school, and I have been seeing how kids are using AI to do their homework, their assignments, and their stuff. To, Today, nowadays in 2025, AI has become a real and a big problem to this world. Artificial intelligence can be helpful sometimes, but using it as a like doing everything with it is impacting the kids' social development. Kids are not only using AI to do homework or do assignments, they're using it as a therapy sometimes. People sometimes they use AI as a friend or as a partner more than just artificial intelligence. This is impacting our world because like now kids are not developing, they don't know how to socially interact with other people. They're just interacting with AI. And whenever you talk to AI, you will see AI is always agreeing with you. They never disagree with you. Every time you can do anything with AI. If you tell them to agree with you, if you say 2 plus 2 is 1, they will agree with you because they don't want to go against you. AI has been, they're not just using AI for homework, assignments, or physical like therapy. They're using it to make fake images, like creating fake inappropriate images. And then this also humiliates other students from the world. I feel like using AI now has become a really big issue because when I see around my school people using AI and doing their homework with it, and then when there's a test, they don't know anything about it, and they're just like, "Oh, I don't know what to do because I didn't study about this." This is also impacting our regions. We have to take 4 regions to graduate, 5 I think, 5 regions to graduate, and most people are failing their region tests because they are always using AI. They don't know what to write. People in freshman years do not know how to write a full sentence because they're using AI every time they try to do anything. How is New York City DOE helping like try to try to solve this problem? My question is that, because every time we try to do something, they come up with a new thing. We stopped using computers, like we stopped using phones. We banned phones from New York City. The New York City state banned phones from schools. But how is it helping? Because they go home, they take out their phone, they search it up, they copy it, and they just do it anyways. And it's not only the student. I see some teachers also generating images with AI. How is it helping the students? You're giving the students the thing to do it. You're giving them the idea. Yes, AI could help. AI could help sometimes, but AI is also replacing humans. They're replacing humans' jobs. Now people do not want to do technology because they think that if I take a major as my technology, as like my cousins, they don't want to do that anymore because they think that AI is taking over it. What's the point of doing it if AI is taking over it? What's my career? That's what I think. I think DOE should take this seriously because this is not only impacting us right now, the next generation, it's also going to impact them. Because when I become a parent and I'm using AI all the time, what am I going to tell to my kid? I don't know anything to teach my kid. I'm going to tell my kid to use AI because I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Thank you so much.
She was amazing. And I just want to say other students from Motion Picture have come to the panel for educational policy meetings and have also provided testimony with the support of AITSA. So we value that, and that's in the space. We're running a little behind, so I want to quickly just ask Kelly Clancy to come up. She's going to be our moderator for the Parents for AI Caution. Oh, yeah. And Martina, please come up, public school teacher and more member. I'm going to be on this panel, and I'm going to be speaking as a parent, but also as a neuroscientist. Leonie, please. From the Parent Coalition of Student Privacy, and then Christina Meyer, social worker and psychotherapist. Thank you,
everybody, first of all, I am so excited that all of you are here on a Saturday morning to hang out with us. Thank you. It's really been very fun to organize this event together, and it's even more fun to see everybody here in person. My name is Kelly Clancy. I have 3 kids in public schools, and I'm a writer and editor. I do a lot of work in education. I'm on the District 20 CEC, and I'm also on my elementary school's SLT. And so I was delighted to moderate this panel today because this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. Is as I talk to parents, they have lots of questions about what AI is, but then they also have lots of questions about what we can actually do about it. And so the way that I came at this issue is from this idea that education is something that belongs to all of us. Like, it's not something that the DOE can prepackage and hand to people and expect to be delivered to our kids. And we can resist things that we don't think are right. And so every time somebody says AI is inevitable, all of us can just say, no, it's not, right? Like, it's as simple as just saying that we have an enormous amount of power and potential to make education look like what it wants. And I have no interest in my kids being guinea pigs for big tech companies to make billions of dollars. And I suspect you don't want your kids to do that either. And so I founded Parents for AI Caution in Educational Spaces with some other folks that are here, with the interest of helping parents figure out what's going on and how they can resist it. Whenever we've asked questions, even as the CEC, about what's going on, it's a little bit of the Wild West. Nobody will tell you where AI is being used, who's using it, what conditions, like what your kids are being asked to do. And I think that that's ridiculous. And we have the obligation to find out what's going on. I believe that I think that teachers are amazing. And I think that teachers know best about how kids learn and how your kids learn. And AI strips them of that ability to make those decisions in the classroom. I also think that AI is cognitively damaging and hurts the ability of our kids to learn. I don't think our students' data should be used to train AI models, et cetera. And so what I'm excited today is that we have experts on all of these issues. And I think that's important because what this will give you a chance to do is to hear the reasons why people who are at the top of their fields feel so strongly about why AI does not belong in New York City public schools. So this panel will be less than 40 minutes long, is our fondest goal. Liat is going to be our timekeeper. She's going to hold it up when you have 1 minute left. And we have one question that we've prepared for each of our panelists. So we'll ask them the question, they'll introduce themselves, and then they'll answer the question. And then there will be time for question and answers, both from the audience in this room and the audience online at the end. Okay. All right. So first, I'm going to ask Martina a question. Martina, you're on the front lines of this. Can you help us understand what's happening in schools right now, where and how is AI being used, and what you think are sort of the pedagogical implications of AI in the classroom?
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here and to see so many wonderful faces. My name is Martina Meijer. I teach 4th grade in a Brooklyn elementary school. I'm speaking on my personal behalf and not on behalf of the Department of Education, obviously, but I have very strong opinions as an educator, and I will use my voice now. So as many of you may know, there are a couple of citywide initiatives that relate to the curriculum mandates. And so MORE, which is our union caucus, I'm a proud member of the Movement and Rank and File Educators, which is part of the UFT. There are many different caucuses, and we are one of the opposition caucuses. And we have been advocating for teacher and professional autonomy. And this relates to the push for AI, because within the NYC Reads and NYC Solves initiatives, there are also like hidden AI initiatives that are not actually mandated, but are being presented as such to educators. And so, for example, many districts have adopted HMH, which is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt's Into Reading program. That's the ELA curriculum that many of the districts have chosen. And within that curriculum, there are 2 AI programs that are being pushed very aggressively at every single professional development session with every single teacher from the very beginning of these curricular mandates. And they are Amira, which is intended for use with English language learners, with multilingual learners. And the other program within HMH is called Writable. As it sounds like, Writable relates to writing. It's about giving like immediate actionable feedback on children's typed writing. I emphasize type there because the children are never actually taught how to type. And so like a lot of the issues with their writing or the feedback it's not about the content. It's a lot of unnecessary, kind of like how we didn't ask for all of the AI integration. Like the teachers are not asking for Writable. Like the problem with our work is definitely an unsustainable workload, but I would argue that that's a labor issue that we have a union for a reason for, that we can advocate around our workload. And so to address the unsustainable nature of the amount of feedback and amount of time that we have to grade outside of our classroom time, AI is not the solution to that. And I would also remind everyone that the people who develop this technology, the folks who are in Silicon Valley, the folks who are the CEOs of big tech, none of them are subjecting their own children to this. All of their children, I mean, I don't want to say all, I don't speak for all of them, but we know that they're sending their children to schools that are screen-free, to Waldorf schools, to Montessori schools. We have evidence and we know what works in education. We know that smaller class sizes are very important. And so we see AI as a way to cut these corners and to fail once again to address the underlying needs, which have to do with decades of underfunding, which have to do with, infrastructure that needs to be addressed. All of these things that we can address within our classrooms are only possible with like human beings and investment with real money. And so what does this do inside of our classrooms? Amira is designed to listen to children's voices. Their parents have not given permission to that. And so this is like a real issue with student data and data privacy, but also it is not designed to understand different accents. And so I refuse to subject my students. They're not guinea pigs. Unfortunately, there are students subjected to that in our school and others, because there are a lot of untenured teachers who might feel pressured and might acquiesce to these constant demands. And so I know through other colleagues at my school that children who mispronounce a word, even if they're saying it correctly, but they have an accent, Amira does not recognize that. And so for a program I mean, just for a program that's supposed to be supporting multilingual learners to not understand people who don't speak perfect English is in of itself like not helpful. This is a human profession. We need humans. Education is relationship based.
Yes. Amazing. And we are so lucky that people like Martina are in the classroom teaching our kids. Like we want people like Martina teaching our kids, not computers. Okay. So next we're going to pass it on to Kaliris. And Kaliris is a neuroscientist. And so we're so lucky to have a neuroscientist here to tell us about the cognitive impacts of AI models. So can you tell us a little bit about what the research from neuroscience says? What do we know about the impact on how kids learn in terms of memory, creativity, problem solving, etc.?
Yes. Hi, all. Good morning. Again, Kaliris, she, her, ella. I'm also a parent of 2 public school students, and currently I'm the president of the Community Education Council for District 4 in East Harlem. I'm also a developmental neuroscientist. Most of my work has been focused on adolescence, the development of social behaviors with a focus of cognition and emotion. So I know a little bit about how the brain works and how kids intake information. So AI has been designed to mimic human behavior, right? The idea is that you have this artificial person that you can talk to and engage in conversations with. Innately, we as humans try to seek how we can accomplish what I like to call goal-directed behaviors, or, you know, get to completing certain tasks. And we are very good at kind of figuring out how to do that in an easy way. And so folks that are presenting AI as an option for us are basically eliminating the possibility of us engaging in multi-sensory experiences that will facilitate the connections that our brains make in order to consolidate neural circuits that we can later tap into that enhance our critical thinking and our problem solving. The way that the brain works is, again, we have neurons that are communicating with each other, and every time we reinforce, we rehearse, we engage in a particular experiences, those connections become stronger and stronger. The less that we engage in particular experiences, our brain says, you know what, that information is not important, and so I'm just not going to like retain that, and it's not necessary for me for survival, and it's all about survival. And so by eliminating that process, by eliminating the process of one engaging with with other individuals, we as humans, we have 3 main core needs: physiological needs, social needs, and psychological needs. And I'll let Christina talk a little bit more about that. But by eliminating that social interaction and by eliminating those different contexts of engagement that we could do through play-based curriculum, which Lauren has, you know, you guys passed a resolution recently. And by doing things like what are done in consortium schools and progressive schools, where you're engaging in problem-based learning pedagogy, where we're engaging in inquiry-based pedagogy, that is the way that we can literally shortcut the ability of our children's brains to consolidate information. So it's not just about repetition. That's different than going on Google, right, and searching for the definition of something. There you're just having a one direction information load, and then the student, us as humans, take that information and use that to reinforce other concepts. With the AI is talking to you and it's telling you, oh no, but you should think about this, you should think about that. Again, that reduces the ability of our brain making those connections. And what we've seen through studies, not large sample sizes yet, but what we've seen through multiple studies is that it reduces those centers that are involved in cognitive behaviors, that are involved with memory retrieval, that are even involved with the reduction of ability of the language centers to incorporate that information. And so in turn, at some point, we'll also become some bots, right? Because we will not have the ability to not only just satisfy these innate human needs that we have in terms of social, psychological, and physiological needs, but also the ability to engage with our surroundings in a comprehensive way. So I'll just leave it there and we can talk some more later.
Amazing, thank you. And one of the things that I think is I think everything you said was incredibly important, but one of the things that I keep thinking about is every conversation we have about AI, is a conversation we're not having about play-based learning, about project-based learning, about inquiry learning. Like, and so it's sucking all of the air out of what we know are ways that kids learn and thrive. And so thank you. Our next speaker is Leonie, and Leonie's going to talk to us about what happens with the data that big tech collects from our students. And so, Leonie, I'd love to know, like, what do we know about how AI uses student data, and what can parents do if they don't want their kids using AI products right as of now, and what do you think are the risks to student privacy?
Hi, everyone. My name's Leonie Haimson. I run an organization called Class Size Matters, but I'm also the co-chair of a national group called the Parent Coalition for Student Privacy, which formed in 2014 after we, along with other parents nationwide, protested a $100 million project of the Gates Foundation called In Bloom Inc. that was supposed to collect all the personal student data from 8 states and districts, including New York, and share it with ed tech companies to create their programs around without parental knowledge and consent. So we beat In Bloom, and at the same time, every state and district that had agreed to share the data pulled out. And in 2014,
can you hold your microphone closer?
In 2014, a new law was passed in New York State called Ed Law 2D, which is a pretty good law that protects the privacy, or is supposed to protect the privacy and security of the data of all the tools that are used in schools. But unfortunately, the state has done a lousy job in enforcing it, and DOE has done a poor job in complying with it. AI is a special concern because it mines the personal data of its users to train or improve its products. And right now, AI companies are very desperate to put their hands on high quality data because they're actually running out of it. Our state privacy law 2D specifically prohibits any educational app or program to use personal student data for any commercial purpose, including improving their own products. But this is happening every day under the nose of the DOE. OpenAI, which is the company that produces ChatGPT, which is probably the most popular of these products, say the products, quote, have the potential to be used to identify private individuals when augmented with other outside data, and their use could reinforce and reproduce specific biases and worldviews. We'll get to the issue of bias later, I hope. But New York State and New York City has no guidelines or guardrails at this point for the use of AI, unlike the majority of other states and large districts. Because of the serious concerns that we'd expressed publicly and privately on the use of AI, I was appointed to an AI working group by the Chancellor last June to propose guidelines for the first time for the use of AI in schools. Yet our working group has been sidelined and stonewalled at every step of the way. One of the first things we did is ask for a current list of AI products used in schools, along with their privacy policies, but the DOE refused to give that to us, saying they have non-disclosure agreements with these companies. They've also refused to give us any access to the AI trainings that they've already provided to more than 80,000 teachers and other school staff. So at the October 2025 meeting, though, 3 AI contracts were voted down when several of the people here spoke out against it, including Kaliris, Christine, and others, including one of Aisha's students. But EPS Amira, which was one of those products, is being used in schools every day anyway. Now, what a lot of people have talked about EPS Amira, which collects and processes student data, which student voices, which is considered especially sensitive biometric data. The state education department put out a statement last year saying that as to biometric data, schools must consider the privacy implications, the impact on civil rights, the effectiveness of the tool, and parent input. Of course, New York City parents have not been given any input about the use of these schools. Again, as I think Martina mentioned, it's produced by a company, HMH, whose privacy agreement with DOE links to another webpage, which explicitly says the data is supposed to be used for product improvement, which, as I said, violates the law. Magic School's another company that has products being used in schools, including products to help teachers create IEPs, which have a lot of very sensitive student data. And if you look, it's hard to find. They use 5 different AI companies as sub-processors, including ChatGPT. So what should parents do? First, you should ask your principals what AI tools are being used in your child's classroom, including whether teachers are allowed to use Magic School or other programs to compose IEPs, and what their policies are to protect student data. This is your right under the law. If they involve biometric data, you should point out that the state has said they should only be used with parent input, and parents should ask to opt out of these tools. And there's an opt-out letter, I think, in the toolkit. Christine, who's here today, brought up these issues with her principal and DOE, and now they're asking for parent consent. Now, that's still against the law, because even with parent consent, you're not supposed to use the product for product improvement, but it's a good step forward. The DOE is supposed to come out with new AI guidelines by the end of this year, which means in the next couple of weeks. They're weirdly calling this a playbook. We, the AI working group that was supposedly told we were supposed to come up with the guidelines, has not even seen a draft of this report. They told us finally they would give us a couple days ago, and we have still not seen it. But we want to be in touch when the guidelines are released so that parents and teachers and others can provide feedback and opposition, probably to the guidelines and or suggestions for changes. And we will also be offering next steps you can take in order to better protect your kids' education and their privacy. Thanks.
Thank you, Leonie. I think all the time about how we get permission slips home every time our kids are given popsicles, but nobody has ever asked us to sign a permission slip about training big data, big tech through our kids' biometric data. So I really appreciate this. And one of the things that I'll highlight in a second, but I just want to point out, is that we have a toolkit for you that's online, and you can scan the QR code that's in the back of one of these flyers, where we have, and we're going to be building out this toolkit with information as we get it, because things move fast, but you can get sample opt-out letters, a script that you can use when you call the governor's office, things like that. And so we have ways that you can take action when you leave, and we'll talk about that more. But finally, perhaps in many ways, the most fundamental question that we have is going to be answered by Christina, which is, how should we think about concerns for our children's mental health? So our student speaker a few minutes ago talked about children using this as therapists and to make friends. One of my friend's kids, he logged on to his work computer and typed, "Will you be my friend?" into Google Gemini. And then we also know that these bots have been coaching children on how to die by suicide. The mental health issue is tremendously concerning, I think, for every single parent and teacher that's in this room. And so I would love to know what you've seen in your practice, what we should be worried about and aware of, and what we can do maybe to help prevent some of this. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. I'm Christina. I'm a social worker and psychotherapist. I've worked in agency and educational settings with children and families, particularly asylum-seeking children and families, and also children and families involved in the family policing foster care system. I currently work at a mental health clinic in downtown Brooklyn, and I work with adolescents and adults, and my specialty is survivors of childhood abuse and neglect, particularly sexual abuse. And so day in and day out, I do this really intense relational work that is complicated and has a lot of ups and downs and is deeply human and deeply relational. And I guess, I think it's complicated for me to speak from personal experience about people using AI as a therapist, because they wouldn't come and see me usually if they were using AI as a therapist. The people who come and seek me out are the people who are looking for a human connection. That being said, the things that I see, even among the kind of students who are seeking out help from a supportive adult, is this deep sense of hopelessness and purposelessness. And I hear this from my colleagues, especially my colleagues who work with college-age students at college counseling centers. But I frequently have kind of adolescents come in, and maybe the kid loves to draw, or they love to make comic books or collages, or they're really interested in something artistic. And the one thing that they found, and I remember this was a huge thing after the Studio Ghibli AI generated art machine came out, was, what's the point of doing this anymore? What is the point of me trying to gain skill in this artistic area this is such a devaluation of the work. Why should I spend hours and hours on drawing a picture when AI can do it in a few seconds? And then people say they don't know the difference. They feel like their work and their creativity is fundamentally devalued. And then another thing is, like, I hear students, you know, they're very honest with me. Like, I use ChatGPT for anything I'm not good at. They'll do the schoolwork that they know how to do, that they feel confident in. But anything that they struggle with, they will use ChatGPT for, because what is the purpose of the process of dealing with failure? And I think that this purposelessness is at the heart of something a lot greater. And I think there's often moments, I think students often feel this sense of doom, especially around how the economy is going, how they as humans are going to be valued, if their labor is going to be valued in the future. And these kids are smart. It's not, I don't think they're lazy. I don't think they're stupid. I think they're very talented. I think that they're very capable people. But when the world is telling you that your only value will be input into an AI generated machine in the future, what is your sense of your own value and your purpose in the world? Now, coming from a perspective of an adult, I think the thing that I see is that, like, people who substitute AI, you know, there is this sort of addiction for human relationships. And my concern is that when people kind of use AI and substitute it for a human or for a therapist, it has an implication for how they value other people. And time with another person, another human person, is finite and limited. It requires that person to pay attention to you, to remember you. AI does not have these constraints. And people tell me that the benefit of AI is that it is limitless, that anyone can have it. But the access to mental health is not a problem that's going to be solved by AI. It is going to be solved by addressing our healthcare system and the grave inequities and the fact we do not have universal healthcare. So research has shown us time and time again that human relationships are the most important. And I think that being able to mentalize will be the greatest skill that our students can have. And that is not going to come from having machines repeat back to them what they already think and what they already know, and never challenge or allow them to perspective take.
Yes, thank you so much for these comments. It's so important for us to just be able to think about how important it is to build friction and, you know, friction into the learning experience, that the trying and failing is part of it, and that it's something, there's something deeply human about trying and failing and trying again. So thank you for the work that you do with kids, and also for being here to share some of that with us. We have a little bit of time for questions and answers from the audience now. I think what we'll do is we'll take questions from folks that are here in person, and then we will see if there are questions from people online. I think Alina is moderating that chat as well. So if you have questions online, you can put it in the chat, and Alina will vocalize them. Does anybody here in person want to ask a question for any of our panelists? You can address it to a particular person.
Two additional things that we didn't mention. On the parent side, we recently, 2 weeks ago, had a meeting around data privacy, and Maggie and I asked explicitly if we could opt out, and the Department of Education and the head of policy said we did not have that option. And so I really love the fact that Christine is going to her principal and asking for these things, because we're going to have to go principal by principal, school by school, because as far as the Department of Education is concerned, there is no law, no policy that protects our kids. And I explicitly said to them, how is it that I can tell my medical students to not use AI for patient notes, but you can't tell teachers to not use AI for my children's information? That part. The second thing that we didn't mention, I think we're going to talk about it a little later, is that AI is also incredibly racist. And so a lot of the harm that is happening with kids of color that are engaging and are in dire need of mental health services is that they talk to these chatbots, and it is all centered on a Eurocentric perspective of what potentially could be an interaction with another human. And so spits out a lot of racist comments, profiles people, and causes more harm, particularly in marginalized communities. Our system supports predominantly children of color. And so on top of the fact that we don't have culturally responsive education, on top of the fact that we're using prepackaged curriculum, on top of the fact that 80% of the content that we share with our kid or more is Eurocentric, now we're also exposing them to this other type of synthetic interaction that makes them even more policed, criminalized, and in a deficit mindset. So I just want to make sure that we also understand that framework. A lot of the things that we as professionals have learned, even in higher education, is incredibly Eurocentric. So even in the ways that we deliver therapy and engage with other humans to support them through mental health conditions are not conducive to the needs of people of color. And so we have to consciously and intentionally and consistently unlearn, right? Engage in that process that I just told you about, those neurons that are connecting and making consolidated circuits. We can disrupt that by engaging in these social interactions and these different experiences that will break those neural networks and help us reconnect in a more culturally responsive way. So I just wanted to make sure to put that out there.
Thank you. I think Kyle's gonna.
Hi, Tiny Mike. Thank you so much for all your comments. I feel very energized and inspired. I have a question that I'm trying to formulate, which is, AI comes on top of, I think, many, many years, decades of like you were talking about alienation and kind of hyper individualism. And so there seems to be a lot of alignment here on this panel. And I'm curious what you find to be most effective with young people in terms of challenging what they're getting from everybody else, right? That it's either inevitable or it's like the easiest way to approach it, or I think in a world where there are very few options, like what kinds of things kind of move towards that desire for more human connection versus computers? Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the things is showing genuine interest, bring in your poem that you wrote, bring in your piece of work. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it means to you. Why did you choose that color? I think that that's, extremely important in saying, like, showing that I, as a professional, really value the work that my patients do. But I also think there's something about the process that you go through, especially in like long-term work, one-on-one work with a patient. And I know my colleagues who do groups kind of support this too, is avoiding this sort of individual, self-reinforcing, self-reflexive thing. Like mental health, I think the way we talk about it seems to be like a self-reflexive thing. And as you were pointing out, it is something that is culturally constructed, like our relationship to it, and it's a relational process. And so one thing that comes and from it is like a kid will come in and then I think they often will ask, like, why should I listen to you? Why should I talk to you? And it's through the process of engaging, showing genuine interest in them. And over time, having them kind of perspective take. I think kids often start out like not wanting to know a single thing about me. And towards the end, they're like, do you have siblings? Do you have parents? And I think, unlike AI, I do, and I can talk about it. And I think that that's like a moment when a student is suddenly like, or a child or someone of any age, everyone can get better at this, but a process of thinking like, what am I feeling? Are you feeling something different? And having that sort of theory of mind where you're having a connection with another person. I think it's kind of magical when it happens. And there are like moments that I probably can't share publicly, but that I think reinforce this idea of like, we are in a co-constructed dynamic.
Lauren's an amazing educator who can definitely speak to this as well.
Sorry. Okay. All right. I'm just going to take over the teacher chair for a second. I'm Lauren Monaco, she, her. I am an early childhood educator, and I would say the answer to this, in my perspective, is through play. We are all born seeking meaning. We are all born curious. If you've ever spent any time with a baby or a toddler or a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, you see that they're trying to make connections with the world. You know, we're building language, we build culture. This is part of what makes us special as humans, is that we engage, and through play is learning, play is trying to make those connections, and that is what develops our brain, our prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning, and that's essential. It is part of our survival. And I would say play isn't just unique to childhood, although it's becoming less and less predominant with all these things that we impose onto our children. Play is incredibly important. It's incredibly important to a democracy. It's incredibly important to our communities. And I would say we should bring that to our adult relationships as well.
Now that Lauren mentioned play, I just want to say that I also co-host a radio show with Kaliris called Talk Out of School. It's going to be on tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and it's also a podcast, so you can go online if you missed it. But I interviewed a woman who's explaining why parents should not buy AI toys for their kids for this Christmas, because that destroys a lot of what we're talking about in terms of human interaction, dealing with other people, learning how to deal with conflict, encouraging your creativity, all the things that make us human. And there are more and more of these AI tools on the marketplace that are very seductive to parents, and they are also very privacy invasive, and they actually, will take conversations that happen in your home, a lot of private incidents, and use it in various ways that we don't even necessarily understand. So that's my advice for today.
Thank you. Alina, is there, I think, Alina?
Yes, I'm going to read a question from the chat. This comes from Shannon Ritchie. Superintendent of District 14 has told me we cannot opt our children out of AI learning modules. What can we do with SUPs who are pushing this on our kids? So I know Kaliris probably definitely has some thoughts, and maybe Kelly on that.
I mean, you just opt out. You just say your kids won't do it. I think that there is a lot of information here too, but opting out just means that your kids will not do it. You can go to the CEC, you can organize. We have some CEC resolutions online that we've had a lot of success getting passed through. There's surprising bipartisan consensus for an AI moratorium, which, literally them saying you can't do it is what are they going to do if you opt out? We've opted our kids out of AI use at both of their schools. One principal was extremely happy we were doing it. One principal wasn't thrilled, but okay. I mean, you just have to decide. You can make people mad. And I think Christine has something that come on. Yeah, come on up. Take the microphone. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Right here for you.
Okay. So I want to talk about my experience with this because I think it might be helpful to people. So Leonie mentioned that I opted my daughter out of Amira, and that our our principal has allowed that. What that actually looked like though was a number of us making a big stink about ed tech in general. As a result of that big stink, our principal invited a representative from DIIT to come and talk to us and to our SLT especially. And in that conversation, I brought up, hey, Amira is breaking this law. Amira is collecting, or recording kids' voices and using it to train their AI. And that was news to DIIT. Yeah, I know. And I sent them the privacy policy. I sent them, and at this point, I'm told they're looking into it. And so in this moment when they're looking into it, our principal has agreed, okay, we're going to kind of roll this back, and only a few kids are using it, and their parents all know about it. So that's the actual situation here. We haven't actually had a ton of, she's not letting us opt out of anything else, right? We're being told we can't. Teachers won't accommodate if your kid, won't use the math app or whatever else. But I don't know, maybe DIIT is a valuable thing here if they hear more and more. Anyway, that's just my experience.
Thank you. Yes, sorry. Thank you.
Privacy officer of DOE who basically doesn't give a shit and tells us to look that the contract has contrary language. And then when you foil and then he says you have to foil for the contract. and then it can take up to 2 years to get the contract, and they still say they don't have one. And then you go and appeal it with the chief general counsel at DOE, and they still say they don't have one. And then you point out printed materials which say they have one. And then you have to get your lawyer to write a letter to the chief counsel of DOE to get a hold of the contract. And even if the contract is stronger than the privacy agreement that is posted online on the DOE website, or links to another privacy policy which explicitly says the product is going to be used for product improvement, DOE is not making any effort to oversee that, to make sure how the data is or is not being used. ChatGPT has just come out with a new product for teachers called ChatGPT for Teachers, saying we do not data mine for product improvement, and yet nobody knows how to check that, whether that's true. And I've talked to technological experts, including Naveed, who's sitting right there, who says nobody knows how to check for that. And so they're doing no oversight on any of the things that are even in their contract, including data deletion, et cetera, because we know when data breaches, and it breaches the data of thousands of kids who have long graduated from school and left the system. So the oversight is shitty, the attitudes are shitty, and the compliance is non-existent.
But okay, so we have to wrap up this Q&A. We're gonna have a 10-minute break where people can, 5-minute break, 3.5-minute break. So people can mingle, grab some coffee, use the bathroom, and then we're gonna be back for our excellent second panel. I will just say that like, all of you have the right to say no, and you should. Like, we, and so it's not easy to say no, which is why you need to talk to people and build coalitions and things like that. But like, all of this works when people just comply with things that they're not happy with. If you're not happy with it, don't comply. And it's not easy, but it's possible, and it is your right. And those of us who have more power, like parents, as opposed to untenured teachers, have a special obligation to say no. So thank you so much to our first panel of brilliant people. Very exciting. Get some coffee, get some bagels, come back for the second panel because it's going to be amazing. Yeah, we have a flyer up here about iReady. The elevator, but it's already
centered direct action for climate policy on a city and state and used to be federal level. And I just want to, you know, for me, why I'm here and why I'm so thankful to our panelists, to our hosts, and to all of you, because this is just the beginning of something, right? This is not the only event like this. This is not the only time we're going to be able to have this conversation. I became a teacher because I love children. And then I became a climate organizer because I love children. And it's because I love children, my children, your children, all children, that I am deeply concerned about AI use in New York City public schools. And concern is really an understatement. And I genuinely, we're going to talk about the big picture in this panel, right? On a societal level, on a planetary level, what are the implications and impacts of AI use by the largest school system in the country? I genuinely think this is the fight of our time. AI is a nexus between, right, like Kaliris talked about in the last panel, how we meet our basic needs, between the climate crisis, between rising authoritarianism and fascism, which we're going to talk more about in this panel. And I'm so heartened that all of you are here, that people are online listening in. And before we get started, my ask of you is that you take everything you're hearing, because I think we have a very receptive audience here, a lot of people who are sort of already on the same page, but that you take this information, you take these stories and inspiration to your school community and be an ambassador for someone, you know, for this is a nascent movement, for saying, no, we're not going to subject our kids to this experiment that will leave them a world on fire. So I'm, again, really thankful for all of you, very glad to be here. And I need to look at my, my questions, which are on my phone, which is the opposite of what I should be doing. And thankful to our panelists. I'm going to ask that you guys just introduce yourselves, you know, where you work and the context for which that you're coming to this. And our first question is for Mizue. Why should we be concerned about AI use in schools given the current political and economic context?
Should I stand up?
No, I don't know. Sorry, I'm used to standing, so I sit up. But you're fine.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, okay.
I don't mind. But I much appreciation to everybody.
Hold the mic close.
Oh, hi, it's Mizue. It's really hard to talk about these things in 4 minutes, but I'm going to try my best. I run an organization that I founded a few years ago called the Collaborative Research Center for Resilience. And really what our main thing is that we look at how government embrace of technology is the ways in which it fuels the power of police and corporations while we continue to try to fight for what remains of public good and sites of care, including public schools, which brings me here today. Thank you so much for inviting me. We also worked on this through our collaboration with teachers in your district, this flyer on iReady, and these are the kinds of things that we would love to provide, continue to provide as research and resources for you all. So I don't need to talk about what AI is wrong with AI. My question is, what should we be concerned about, right? The use of AI in public schools. So I'm just gonna take it really kind of meta. You know, I started doing organizing on immigration before the Department of Homeland Security was founded. And so I feel like I have this position of seeing kind of the ascendancy of not just an agency, but a way of thinking and a way of a whole paradigm, which very much has helped erode privacy laws, including in schools, but also to this point of like what the DoD, Department of Defense, calls identity dominance. The idea that the government wants to know who everybody is, who everybody knows, where they are, so that they can do whatever they need to do at the point that they need to do it. This is a moment that I don't need to explain very much to you all now that we're in. But a key piece of this was data, of course, surveillance to gather the data, biometrics, but also categories, putting people into categories, which is very much what I think AI is accelerating in schools. The other piece of work that I did was, you know, along these lines was focused on policies at New York City. And I just I don't have a lot of time, but I did want to talk about how I did work on the very first iteration of the municipal ID, the ID NYC, and it was a really great example of co-governance. There were like dozens and dozens of us continually brought into conversation with the mayor's office, and my position was to try to make it the most secure ID that it could be, because this was, for mostly undocumented peoples. And then what happened 2 years after that was they, behind our backs, behind closed doors, issued an RFP to digitize the ID, to basically make it like a repository for all the data that they would be collecting in the city. What's now the Omni card, that's what it would have been. And a financial mechanism that was effectively a debit card, but we weren't invited to the table. And when we asked to be invited to the table, they said, sorry, it's in procurement, we'll talk to you after the contract is signed. Right. And so all these things kind of made me really think about this point that I bring back to about it's fundamentally about democracy, right? Who's at the table, who's getting heard, and what's at stake? When does that ever get considered, right? What's at stake on implementing this technology? So I started this organization and I started researching schools, and I really was thinking mostly of what we typically think about surveillance. 1 minute, damn it. Okay. Okay, so what I want to tell you is this, why we should be concerned. You can't separate the momentum behind AI from the momentum behind the militarism and border control, right? We all know this. The companies like Google, like EdTech, let's also be careful to not just focus on AI. Yeah. EdTech, as we know, uses AI sometimes, it sometimes doesn't. The companies that are making millions, billions off of the DoD, DHS, are also the ones that are in our schools. It's not just corporations, venture capital, and private equity. Yeah. Martina talked about HMH. That's owned by Veritas Capital, which is a company I researched 3 years ago, building the world's largest biometrics database for ICE. Okay. The other point I want to make is, centrality of surveillance and governance. I did want to talk about the national security paradigm eroding privacy rights, but Leonie talked a little bit about this, but how it was in FERPA 2012, where they basically gave license to 3 third parties to have access to all this data. And so this is kind of the legacy upon which EdTech is built, along with No Child Left Behind and all that data collection. Sorry, I hate to do this, but I'm running through my thing. Also, we have to look at the power behind the technology to understand what it's trying to do. So the EdTech companies, we're doing this research. It's also a lot of right-wing kind of long-standing agendas to undo public schools. So we got to keep an eye for that. And then, someone on the previous panel said AI is racist. It's also many things, right? It's built on the very social, political, and economic matrix we inhabit. So that means it's misogynistic, it's xenophobic, it's all the things, but English-centric, all the things, but also just to be really careful to not call it intelligence, right? A previous person was talking about the importance of emotion. Audre Lorde taught us that you need emotion, right, to learn most effectively. But I think, you think of AI, a way to explain it, it's like a Hoover vacuum of data that can identify patterns that then can come up with a plausible reason. And I think part of our work is actually showing people what is the power behind AI, whose interest is it really serving, and what the hell does it actually do? So I have a lot more to say, but my time is up.
Thank you. And I just want to say that, again, this is the first of many things to come. And to our panelists who are all amazing, you're locked in. You have to do more events with us. And I know there are some people in the audience too who could probably speak on a panel about this issue. But thank you so much. I'm feeling, fired up and terrified at the same time. And to continue in that vein, I'm going to pass it to Marta to talk about what are the climate and environmental impacts of AI data centers, and how does the city contracting with AI companies gel with or not gel with the city's climate goals.
Thanks, Liat. I'm Marta. I'm the director of the program on climate, economic, and social justice and corporate accountability at Amnesty International. And I also organize with Climate Families NYC. What I'm about to say is informed by my work at Amnesty, but I am speaking in my capacity with Climate Families NYC, not in my professional capacity, much like the caveat that you gave. So before I get into, I do have some facts and figures to scare the shit out of you in case that hasn't adequately been accomplished. But before I do that, I just want to say a few sort of zoom out things about the regulatory environment that we're in. And many of you have sort of alluded to this in your comments. But first, just to note that AI is developing super fast, and the main people with the expertise are from within the industry, right? So environmental NGOs haven't kept up, the public sector hasn't kept up. I was really appreciative that Senator Kristen Gonzalez was here, but for the most part, elected officials haven't kept up. And this means that industry has disproportionate power over all the discussions around regulation. Second, the current political environment in the US, I know this isn't a shocker for any of you, is really hostile to regulation right now. So we're at a moment when we need regulation, things are happening fast, and the environment here and overseas is really bad. So we have the US anti-climate positions that they're pushing, it's instigating a race to the bottom globally, and they are pushing fossil fuels and lifelines to the fossil fuel industry, including AI and plastics, in a very coercive way, in a 19th century imperialist manner all over the world. The US has just played a major role in gutting AI regulation in the European Union and in gutting environmental sustainability regulation in the European Union, threatening them if they failed to do so. It has, and as was stated earlier, there's also efforts to make state level regulation of AI not allowed, right? So in this environment, where local regulation is difficult and where regulation hasn't kept up, large consumers can play a very important role in sending a moral signal and in having a material impact by deciding to purchase or not to purchase or to sign agreements for this technology. So as the largest public school system in the country, the New York City Department of Education is one such consumer, right? So I want to note that there are many steps in the AI supply chain, from mining to the production of chips to data centers. All of these have a terrible environmental impact. They pollute the communities nearby, and they contribute to greenhouse gases that are damaging our atmosphere. So just to say a few quick things about this, you've all heard about critical minerals in the news. Critical minerals, part of their use is for technology for AI. So you've heard about mining. A lot of the critical minerals that we use now are on indigenous lands. They are in low-income countries with poor regulation that we've pushed. We have increase in murders and intimidation of land defenders and others fighting these mines. So that's issue number one, as well as all the pollution, ground, water, air, and children are disproportionately harmed by this pollution because of their higher respiratory rate, several other things. I forgot to note that I have a PhD in public health, so I'm coming at this from some of that as well. They're also processed into semiconductors increasingly in the US. This is onshored with the investments by the US government and making sure this is happening. This is largely unregulated. The production of semiconductors also entails a lot of use of PFAS, forever chemicals. You've all heard a lot of fun things about those. And finally, data centers. There are roughly 7,000 worldwide, up from 3,600 in 2015. They use an enormous amount of water, including in New York State, potable water to cool the centers, and they emit a significant amount of greenhouse gases. They use energy on the grid at a moment when we cannot be putting more demand on the grid. We have real affordability issues. In addition to that, we are near multiple tipping points with climate, with risk of irreversible damage to the Amazon turning into a savanna, ice sheets melting permanently. At this clutch moment, we cannot be putting more demand on the grid for things that we do not need, which, as you've all outlined, do not serve their purpose. I'll stop there for that time, but thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Marta. And I think this makes me, we think about schools and what is the purpose of schooling, which is really like the question we're trying to get people to pay attention to. And as parents, we want the purpose to be our children's well-being, right? Their ability to thrive and be happy and be healthy human beings. And it just is so clear that AI use in this largest school system is at odds with their ability to thrive. Like, on a day-to-day basis, but also on this earth and as they grow into adulthood. So again, we're all gonna come back together and do this again. But I'm really excited to to introduce Oscar. And would love to hear what you think or what you know the equity and racial justice issues with using AI in schools and as a school system are.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Oscar Romero. I am the Chief Information Officer of the New York City Civic Engagement Commission. I am also an educator. I'm a survivor of the drug wars in Mexico and also a congressional candidate. And I'm here to talk to you. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And there's so many different things. 4 minutes, I'm gonna do my best. So I'm gonna start with the end and hopefully I'm gonna convince you that it matters. So the first thing is nothing is neutral. And the underpinning structures on which AI is built and the internet and everything behind it is not neutral. It's built on a colonial project that is racist, that is sexist, and that follows a neoliberal profit-driven mechanism. So that's the first starting point. The second thing is who you elect for office matters. What is happening right now in the city is a consequence of the Adams administration. And I can say that as one of the people in the mayor's office during the de Blasio administration that was leading the inclusive innovation portfolio that was dismantled the moment the transition happened, right? Like the work that we were doing, providing, for example, community design agendas for a smart city agenda of the city of New York, that was gonna represent the needs of people in low-income communities and not the investment portfolio of the Silicon Valley. All of that work was dismantled, as what was prioritized was outsourcing the work and the tech labor to external companies, right? So that completely changed the dynamic in the city, and that led to what you currently see today, which is a massive Office of Technology and Innovation that, in my perspective, has missed the mark and has been creating guidelines for how to suggest to government agencies what they could be using with AI, at the same time that all these other contracts are happening in the background, and all the agencies are basically let decide how they do their own policies with very little oversight and very little community engagement, right? So I'm really hoping that in this new administration, all of that is being brought to the forefront, and it is changed. So now a little bit about the legacy of colonialism of the internet. If you think about what is the underpinning of this, you will see the same design of any kind of infrastructure, right? It starts first with the places that can afford the most. And so then that creates a bunch of inequality for the places that do not have it. If you think, for example, and let me tell you a little bit about the digital divide. So you start with infrastructure. If you take a look at the fiber optic cables that connect the Americas, there's about 36 of them that go across the ocean connecting the continents. 33 of them go to the United States. 75% of the Latin American information goes through Miami. One floor belongs to Verizon in that like hub of internet service providers. The other floor is the military. So you wouldn't be surprised to know that all the scandals with Edward Snowden, the espionage on Latin American leaders, all of this has consequences for Latin America. Like a law of the state of California determines what you can see across Latin America in terms of copyrights, right? So now what you're seeing is a system that was designed to protect copyrights and content of the United States that now that has been used to weaponize, for example, in the medical field against everybody, because we have to pay way more money than other people pay for the same pharmaceuticals. And all of that system, now it's being challenged by the very same technology companies, only selectively, so they can continue to leverage copyright where it is convenient for the capitalists and project, and not in other places, right? Like, for example, take all your data and privacy. So a couple of levers about this digital divide. It's infrastructure. It's also services. How much does it cost for you to have internet service providers? You wouldn't be surprised to know that internet services in the Bronx are monopolistic, are way less than the ones that you will have in Midtown. Then it is about the software and the hardware. Do you have the devices? Not the same to have a computer versus a phone. Then the software is all going to a subscription model now that is ever more privacy invasive. And then after you have all of that, which, by the way, let me remind you, the promise of the internet, right, was that it was going to unlock knowledge and unlock opportunities for everybody. And under that premise, they said, we must invest your public money on all this infrastructure that is not going to go to your places. It's going to go to the wealthy places first, and it's going to be all this unequal to you, right? Well, all of that so that then you can, congratulations, become a corporate user, right? And the market will tell you one thing really well. They will tell you how to consume, and they will tell you how to be consumed and transform you into this basically data source that they are mining. And so the bottom line here is the promise of the internet, that it was going to be a beacon of critical thinking and opportunity of connection, That is not happened. I'm gonna do my best. What has happened, right? With the place where critical thinking happens is in schools. It is in schools where people actually learn the skills to discern what kind of knowledge, what kind of technologies can actually help them improve their quality of life, right? The market is not gonna teach you that. The ability that you have using a product is not gonna teach you that. And the technology companies are targeting the education systems because a particular New York City's education system, because it's the largest education system in the United States. Now, the last thing I will say is addressing this lie of, well, these are critical technical skills that are going to help you get a job. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the technology ecosystem in New York City. There's about 220,000 jobs, depending on how you count technology jobs. 79% of the people in those technology jobs identify as men. Let that sit for one moment, as men. More than 50% of the population in New York City identify as something other than men. There's 43% of the population in New York City in working age that identify as Black and Latino. Only 17% have some of these technology jobs. If you go deeper beyond the project management jobs and entry-level jobs, and you go into the software development jobs, only 9% are Black and Latino. The salary gaps are between $10,000 and $30,000 between men and everybody else. The higher you go, the wider it becomes. So tell me, do you think that teaching kids that how to use a product is going to undo the racist segregation that leads to those inequalities that make the tech ecosystem look the way that it looks? It won't. It is going to be policy, it is going to be advocacy, it is going to be at work, and it is going to be tripled down on that our tech companies, our work environments, our universities need to look the way that the students that graduate from our Department of Education look like. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And, you know, speaking of policy changes and what, you know, is possible, as we have a new mayor coming into office, thank God, you know, we have an opportunity to at least begin to remedy some of this and to protect our children and our students from this truly predatory technology. So I'm really excited to have Lara Lai here. Lara, what are as you see it, the obstacles and possibilities when it comes to regulating or countering this push for AI with respect to our school system as a whole?
Thank you, Liat, and thank you so much for having me here. I want to bring it down a little and talk about, as Liat previewed, what can we do and what are the mechanisms that exist within the Department of Education to really do a better job of regulating this. We've already heard about parents going to their principals and asking to opt out. We've heard about school-specific, Martina talked about school-specific implementation of things like Amira. What we see going on is sort of a wild west of principals and schools and parents trying to figure this out without any centralized guidance on what are the age-appropriate products that should be used, what data privacy rules have been implemented, and are we assured that our students' data privacy is being protected? There is nothing that has happened at the centralized level to provide any guidance either to parents or to educators about what are we doing here. And so I want to use the cell phone ban as a model for us to think about what can we really do? Because here we are with a cell phone ban that is really 10 or 15 years too late. And I say that as a public school parent with children who are now in college, who spent their entire public school education without a cell phone ban. And as we look at this ban, and I think probably most of the people in this room support that ban, right? And we're going to see the benefits for children who are in elementary school right now of having that ban in place. But when we look back, we say we should have done this 10 years ago, right? And here we are at a pivotal moment in AI where we could stop the same thing from happening so that we're not all here 10 years from now in 2035 saying we should have done this 10 years ago, right? And so I want to talk about even some of the little things that can start happening beyond things like state regulation. And kudos to Senator Gonzalez for her work on this. And I think we need that. But there are some things that could happen right now within the Department of Education to put some boundaries around what is happening. The contracting system within DOE, and I'm saying this because I do work in the comptroller's office, and this is the approach that we take to this issue, needs some serious revision in terms of how products like this are approved. There are no committees of experts who know what Kaliris knows looking at these products and advising the procurement team at DOE on whether these products make sense. There is no, when it comes to a product like HMH, which basically started as a textbook company, there is nobody looking at them critically and saying, oh, look, they added an AI student-facing product to a contract that we gave them 5 years ago. We need to go in there and look at what they're doing. Even school bus companies are going to start using AI in terms of looking to make sure children are crossing the road, you know, and not getting hit by the school bus. So this is not like a DIIT issue. This is an issue of all sorts of current vendors that have long-standing contracts with the Department of Education, adding AI into the contract that they already hold, and there is no mechanism in place to look critically at all of those contracts and ensure that they are actually complying with data privacy regulations, that they are age appropriate and pedagogically appropriate. The other thing I'm going to say is that schools have the ability to spend $25,000, up to $25,000 on things that they want to do, that principals or superintendents want to have without any real oversight from DOE Central. And there is no mechanism in place to ensure that the products that principals are being presented to by these companies and saying this is the next best thing, you have to try it. There is no oversight of that process. There is nobody making sure that those products are being competitively bid. There is no oversight making sure the DPAs for those companies are being filled out by those principals. We want principals to have the flexibility to do what's best for their school community, but with something like AI, we can't expect every principal to be an expert on whether these products have bias issues or whether there are data privacy issues. We have to have more centralized oversight of these contracts. And if that requires saying for now there's a moratorium, we need to get policy out, and the chancellor has said she's going to put policy out. Before we put that policy out, we really should not be just in a haphazard way introducing these products into schools so that you have parents in a situation saying to their principals, I don't allow my 6-year-old to use an iPad. Why should they be doing that in the classroom?
Yes. Thank you so much. So I know we are being mindful of time and when we're getting kicked out of the library, but we have time for 2 questions. So I think we'll do one from the folks here and one from the Zoom. Does anyone have a question for one of our panelists?
This is for everybody.
Oh.
I'm Heather Lewis. I teach at Pratt Institute. I have a question for all of you about, and I know not all of you work with the DOE, but you all touch on this. We do have a new administration, as you mentioned, coming in. What can we do, all of us, to influence what that new administration is going to do? And who are our allies outside of schools and the DOE? Who are the other consumer allies who are doing work in other areas, other public services? how can we join together citywide to create a consumers union, whatever, going back to when they poisoned the milk in the 20s. And we haven't talked about the role of philanthropy in this either. And actually, the 20s, they did fund those consumers. That was a major thrust to support consumer protests. It was philanthropy. Now philanthropy's on the other side. So if you could speak to that also.
Does someone want to address that question first? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I can take a quick step. I mean, I think one of the great things that this administration is doing is creating these different transition committees, right? Like, so one thing that definitely all of us should be doing is making sure that we talk to everybody who we know in these transition committees about all the agenda. I think I would say it is going to be important to make sure that we do a portfolio that goes across government agencies, because this is not an issue only that we should treat in silos, right? And the way we think about the committees should follow that, right? Like there's a technology committee, there's education committee, there's the like more participatory community engagement committees. So I would say that's a great place to start now, where as far as I know, they're really eager to listen.
I'll also just say that I think it would be an amazing thing for this group to come up with an actual memo. I think the transition team probably would like to have something written. 100 days memo. What are the 5 things that you think this administration could do in the first 100 days around this issue? And I think that would be valuable. And it doesn't have to be a long document, but I think it should lay out the issue and what first steps. I mean, the administration has the new administration is going to have priorities, right? That we all support as well. We want more affordable housing. We want free buses. We want universal childcare. Those are the things that we would expect the new administration to be primarily focused on when they start in January. But having a memo with some easy steps, for example, that both lay out the issue and make it easy for the administration to do something, I think would be very productive.
Thank you. I also agree. I heard from folks on the transition team that sooner is better than later. So you might be working tomorrow on that. The other thing I wanted to add was something that I didn't talk about a little, but it's kind of like on April 2025, the presidential administration issued an EO on pushing AI in education, right? And then big tech was all slobbering all over it. And so one thing that I totally agree about procurement being a space, but we also got to know that these people have so much money, right? So Amazon Web Services says we're going to give $30 million to different schools to start using our product. We all know how that happened with free Gmail, right? And so I think also just kind of reinforcing this point about there are so many agendas at play. This is kind of looping back to your philanthropy question. Philanthropy is on all sides of this, as we know. The Koch Foundation, right? The Walton Foundation. These guys, Gates Foundation, right? And now the Gates Foundation is partnering with the Koch Foundation on AI, right? These people have a foundation called the One EdTech Foundation, right? And so I think partly what I was trying to reinforce is seeing the power under these digital infrastructures. Whose power does it consolidate? And how does it weaken our power in the process? But I really feel so compelled by New York City DOE being a huge consumer, because I think something that you don't really have to take that much time to explain to people is what's at stake if we let this giant energy consuming, resource consuming, intelligence consuming monster undermine the very promise of what we can offer our children.
Absolutely. Yeah. Marta, did you want to? I would just add, since I know there are a lot of educators in the room and this work is already happening, but the UFT is all about AI. The AFT is all about AI. And that is definitely an avenue where we need organizing. So if you're here and you're not already involved in more, get involved. And we really need educators to be no, we see through this. This isn't making our jobs easier. This is an avenue to defund public schools and replace us with ed tech companies or just tech companies. So that's super important. The other thing I will say is we are going to write that memo. We're going to write it in like a day to make sure that it's there. And we would love all our panelists who are here, like if you have your notes or just things to send, and you want to even sign off on it with us, I think that would make it really powerful. But we are like definitely, and we plan to do that. So I think we have time for one more question from Alina, or if we have time.
There is a question here from Courtney. How do we get conservative states like Idaho to vote for regulation?
Courtney's joining us from Boise, Idaho.
Wow. I'm going to pass it to Leonie.
So,
Do you see the computer over there, Leonie? Yeah, there's.
hi, Idaho. One of the good things about privacy and AI is that there's a strong bipartisan consensus around those issues. So 3 times in the last couple months, the Congress has tried to push through a prohibition or preemption of all state and district regulations and laws to prevent the harms of AI. And at least the last 2 times, the public has been so overwhelmingly against this push to preemption. One, it was going to be in the reconciliation bill put in at the last minute. There was a lot of support for it within Congress and being pushed by the administration. The Senate ended up voting 99-1 against preempting state regulation of AI. States attorney generals, state legislators, parents, and many others came out against it strongly, and they pushed the Senate to reject it. Again, a couple of weeks ago, there was a push to put this in the Department of Defense Reauthorization Act, slip it in at the last minute. Again, the fight against it was so strong that they decided that they were not going to put it in there. But President Trump, of course, has not given up, nor his ed tech buddies that are leading a special AI group within the White House. So now they are pushing to come against this legally by saying it violates the Commerce Clause of the Constitution and also threaten to defund any state or district that tries to regulate AI. So the good news is that a lot of state leaders are against trying to restrict their ability to try to prevent the harms. I would reach out to your governor, your state AG, and others as soon as the White House comes out with this EO. But I'd say this is one of the very few issues that we have bipartisan consensus in Congress and in states across the country. And so we have a very good chance of beating this back.
Yes.
Just one super quick thing I would add is I mentioned the demands that AI makes on the grid, the data centers make on the grid. So they pollute local communities, they make noise, they take water, so we can leverage an effective NIMBYism against data centers. And affordability is a very politically salient issue. It does increase energy bills. It may increase water bills, and these are things that everybody cares about, just to make that point.
Just to add something else, and I think this is important, especially when we're talking to people that are in different parts of the political spectrum, is how do we boil these down to the issues that are closest to everybody, right? For example, you have to think that it is also related, it is a workers' rights issue. These automation processes are taking a lot of jobs from people and increasing the harsher conditions of working and employment. It is an issue related to how gig economy is organized and what are the types of rights that people have access to. And also, and this is very important, there's a whole world of how our young people engage in video games where they're very vulnerable to all sorts of types of predatory behaviors that technologies are enabling, right? So anyways, there's many ways to, I think, build bridges with people that may have different political alignments, but that might still, again, build consensus towards regulation on AI.
Yeah, and just to add that New York is a massive economy. This is the biggest school system in the country, right? As big systems and states start to regulate and push back, because these companies are national or international, that has an impact in other places too. And I know, Alina, you wanted to.
Just speaking in the direct New York City context, Kelly and myself are on CEC 20, and it's a very, very ideologically diverse district. And we put together a resolution. We're very hesitant and careful about the language. And we were shocked to see that pretty much everyone on the council, that includes people who think very, very differently from us, all supported it. So the support in your local communities is there too, is ideologically and demographically very diverse. And it's very important that you engage people that might think differently than you on other stuff. And that is exactly the experience we had. So that's how we're going to get somewhere.
People we thought would vote against the resolution told us we should add a moratorium in it. And so like we just could not have read the room more differently in the best possible of ways. And I know Kyle's going to talk about the toolkit in 2 seconds, but in the toolkit is a link to 2 different draft resolutions that you can use for your school board in Boise, Idaho, or in New York City if you want to try to advocate for a moratorium. Or South Brooklyn, wherever you are, our resolutions work.
You want to say something? You want me to yeah, please do.
All right, can we give a round of applause to our panelists? Yeah. And to all of you for coming out on a Saturday. I'm going to pass it over to Kyle to talk about next steps.
All right, hi everybody. Let's see, I got to get in the shot here. Perfect. Sorry to you, Marta. All right, hi there. My name is Kyle DeAngelis, he, him. I am a 3rd grade teacher, a UFT chapter leader at a school in Harlem, and I'm also a proud member of MORE, the Movement of Rank and File Educators, the Social Justice Caucus of the UFT. I'm here to wrap things up and talk about next steps. But first, a couple logistics. If you were one of the planners who have to organize today's events, can you stand up or just wave your hand? I want to give a big shout out to our planning team. Lauren, Alina, Kelly, Martina, Kaliris, Leonie, Leah. Did I miss anybody? No, that was everyone. Oh, myself. Okay, well, that's a little gratuitous, Kelly, don't you think? All right. I got involved in the fight against AI because this summer our local union UFT and our national union AFT partnered with OpenAI, Microsoft, and some other really obviously very well-meaning large corporations to bring AI into our schools. I don't have time to go into it completely right now, but if you're interested to hear about how Lauren and I got a copy of Karen Howe's Empire of AI into Randy Weingarten's hands, ask me about it. Or you can listen to it on Lainey's podcast where we told the story there. Oh, Randy Weingarten said specifically that Sam Altman is a bad dude. So anyway, now I digress. We're here to talk about next steps. If you did not, when you signed in, grab one of these flyers, please make sure you get one now. Martina's going to come around, raise a hand, and grab one. On the back of that flyer, there is a list of actions to take. Ask about how AI is being used in your school district. Opt out. Advocate for a citywide moratorium on AI. Call Governor Hochul. Lobby your state reps, or join one or more of the organizations that sponsored today's event. This QR code here takes you to our online toolkit, which has all of these actions with more details and links and emails for people who you need to email or forms you need to fill out for forms. So please take this flyer, scan the QR code, and make sure you're taking these actions and sharing them with folks in your networks. In terms of follow-up, we will be hosting future events with our wonderful panelists and even others who are involved in this fight. So stay tuned for information about that. I can say specifically for the teachers who are in the room, MORE is going to be hosting a General Assembly on Wednesday, January 7th in the evening, specifically on the topic of AI in schools. We invite every New York City public school teacher and our allies who are not public school teachers to join us for that. We'll have more information on that soon, but if you're interested in making sure you're looped in for that, you can talk to me or Martina in the overalls over there, or Lauren with the big flower necklace. Fabulous. Any other events we need to promote before we wrap up? I think that might be, do you have anything, Leon?
Oh.
No, you don't?
No.
You can say one thing, Lara, but more, hopefully.
So it's shocking, or maybe not so shocking, that the Department of Education has put the AI contracts that were voted down recently back on the agenda for December. At least a couple of them, including Lumi, which is Colin Kaepernick's pet project in terms of being helping you be a better writer. So if you feel strongly about this, I invite you to come to the December PEP on the 17th. And exactly, you can submit written testimony as well, because DOE is at it again in terms of trying to put these, get these voted through by the PEP. So
I want to thank everybody once again for being here today. If you're in the room, there's a roll of tinfoil. Take some bagels home with you. Everybody, feel free to mingle until 1 o'clock. We'll be cleaning up in here. Oh, until 12:45. Feel free to mingle. Folks on Zoom, thanks for joining us. And yeah, take good care. Oh, all right. I'm just going off the information I have. We can turn off the Zoom. Thanks again, everybody, for being here.